welcome back to the Super Centex Podcast, talking Central Texas high school football. With me, as always, is DJ Ramirez, Chad Conine. How are y'all doing?
Good.
Pretty good.
Good.
I'm on a remote location today.
You are an undisclosed location.
No. It must be disclosed because I'm right at the heart of Texas. Like I'm at the beating heart of Texas, right? I'm here just adjacent to Billy Bob's Texas. So I'm gonna go ride a mechanical bull after this.
I would pay to see that. You'll have to send us some video later.
Uh-huh.
Let's dive into some Texas high school football, Central Texas style. So to me, the game of the week in our area is Crawford and Marlin, which will be played Friday night at Pirate Stadium in Crawford. That's where DJ will be. It's kind of the de facto district championship game for that league, 8-2A. The winner of this one will definitely have the inside track for the district championship, even though there will be games still to play. But more than that, it's also the rematch of a playoff game from last year, regional final, which Marlin won 26-6, fairly decisively. So break it down for me. Who do y'all think? How do y'all see this one playing out?
Well, I think that, Crawford has been very much Crawford this season and maybe even close to the best version of itself. Although it's hard to actually say that having not seen him play. I know 2 years ago when they made it to the state semifinals, they had a fantastic offensive line. They had younger skill kids then, or at least some younger skill kids. Now their skill kids are veterans, and I haven't really seen them play enough to speak to their offensive line and how good it might be. But they're the best version of themselves, and Marlin is still trying to get back to the best version of itself that sort of existed in the playoffs last year. So I would think in that regard, probably the edge goes to Crawford here.
DJ, what do you think?
Having just talked to both those coaches yesterday and this morning, it does look like Crawford is a little bit more favored just because they have been playing, the best football that they could have been playing. They've only allowed 13 points this last season. And, Marlin kind of had a really tough non-district. They had to deal with a lot of injuries. They're just getting healthy now. I do feel like they've got a little bit more momentum just coming out of that Moody game. And they've started off district pretty well. They've got, I feel like more contributors. And it's something that Ruben Torres mentioned when I talked to him, is that last season was very much more on Trajan Butler, Darian Gillette. And now they've got some more guys that are stepping up, a lot more skill players that are, contributing to the team. And what Coach Jacobs mentioned was that they would have to really stop those big explosive plays and from them from getting out in terms of defense. And they've got a pretty strong, stingy defense. So, and then, I think something that Coach Torres also mentioned was at the end of last season, they didn't have their quarterback and their main running back were out with injury. And so, yeah, I think the Pirates kind of have the upper hand here, but not that Marlin can't win it or can't figure out how to win it,
Yeah,
and that's in Crawford on Friday, right?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, what a great setting. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Brett, sorry.
Yeah, no, it is. It should be a fun game. DJ made some excellent points there. I think the contrast of styles is going to be a lot of fun in this one, just because DJ mentioned the defense that Crawford has played this year. I talked to Coach Jacobs last week, and obviously, we brought it up then. It's a collective effort. They really swarm to the ball. They've got some super Centex kids, like Cameron Walker and Luke Torbert and stuff, but it's been a group effort, and he really likes the way the D line is getting off the ball. But then you look at Marlin, and DJ mentioned it, obviously got off to a really kind of slow start in terms of 0-3 in non-district, but they're playing some pretty good teams. And then as they've gotten into district play, they've gotten it going. And certainly, I think, you know, obviously Crawford hasn't seen an offense as explosive as Marlin. So it's going to be strength on strength and should be a lot of fun for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So another really good one is the one that Chad, you'll be at. If you drop down another division in Class 2A to 2A Division 2, you get number 5 Chilton hosting number 8 Bremond in a top 10 game. We really haven't talked about these teams on the podcast this year. Shame on us, but this really sets up as a sensational showdown. So which of these teams in your mind has been more dominant to this point of the season? And second part of that, can either one of them challenge number 1 Mart?
Well, Bremond, I mean, if you look at the schedule results, Bremond has just been off the charts. I mean, they've just smashed everybody. And Chilton, I mean, Chilton has maybe the best win of the pair because they beat Italy, which is a class up and a playoff team and a class up, you know, or a division up. And so, but I mean, just looking at the scores that Bremond has won by, it's pretty dang impressive. And I think the big appeal for this game for me is just sort of the mystery of it, because it's hard to say. I mean, when we go to pick these games, it's going to be a coin toss on this one, I feel like. Because I've picked against Chilton this year and got burned for it. You know, I think I picked against Italy and got burned for it. And, you know, as the second part of your question, and well, I'm looking forward to learning a lot about both of these teams, about seeing who their go-to guys are and who they hand the ball to on, you know, 3rd and 2, or who they want to have the ball in those crucial down and distance situations. And I think, can they compete with Mart? I mean, the easy quick answer is no, they can't. You know, I learned that lesson last year, right?
The Chilton, the Mart fans let you know about it.
I know. You just say, can they beat Mart? No, just as fast as you can, right?
Right.
But looking at the past, Bremond has been where Mart was, you know, in terms of winning multiple state championships and getting to the state championships game several times in a row. And Chilton has, you know, back before they were in the same division, Chilton was there too. And you can see this sort of progression in Chilton, because they were awful 4 years ago, you know, and then they were a playoff team, and then they had a better record and were a playoff team. And then last year they make the regional final and play Mart in the regional final, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you think, oh, well, they lost a bunch of kids, they're not going to be as good this year. But then here they are, beating Italy, beating everybody else on their schedule bad. So, you know, they're getting to that point where they're going to be, them and or Bremond are going to be Mart's toughest competition in the region.
Good stuff. What do you say, DJ?
Oh God, it's hard to really come up with an opinion when, like Chad said, we haven't really seen like actual game on either of these teams. Whenever they come up on like the high school picks, I kind of just automatically pick both of these teams.
Right.
Yes.
That's a good call.
I don't even like look at the records or anything. It's just kind of like you automatically know they're going to be doing what they're supposed to be doing, just in terms of what they've done in the past this season. It's hard for me to really come up with an analysis unless I've seen them play. But
well, you mentioned just saying, you know, you mentioned seeing the name of a game going like Chilton. Okay, yeah, Chilton, right? The first week of the year, they played Bosqueville, and I'm going, okay, Bosqueville is a for sure playoff team in 2AD1, and Chilton is a playoff team in 2AD2, and I'm going to lean towards Bosqueville on this one. And then Chilton comes out and just like beats them by, you know, however many touchdowns. Yeah.
They've had both, like you said, both of them have had impressive results this year, and to me, that's the clear district championship game again for that district. You know, first of all, let me say about Jeff Kozowski at Bremond, a sleeper for, you know, again, we probably don't talk about him enough, but a sleeper for one of the best coaches in our area. Bremond is consistent every year, very, very good. They're kind of on the fringe of our area, but we do cover them, and the Bryan Eagle does as well. So we kind of share them. But you know, Bremond had a run. Now they had Rashad Paul, who was one of their best players ever in school history, but they had a run of 3 state championships back in the mid 2010s. And then, Chad, you mentioned sort of the upward progression of Chilton. It's interesting that has continued with a first-year head coach in Benny Hewitt. Now, he was there before as an assistant, so I think that helps maintain some of that continuity that we've talked about with, like, Tyler Beatty at China Spring. So, yeah, it's going to be a fun one. And like Chad said, I think a little bit of a learning game for us, you know, just to kind of figure out who these teams are. And I don't think the loser of this game is incapable of making a deep run itself in the playoffs. You know what I mean? I think both these teams are going to be teams to reckon with.
I mean, you could foresee them playing again in the playoffs if one of them didn't have to play Mark.
Right. Exactly. Let me pull up my questions here. So DJ, you wrote about it in your Sunday Rewind column, but one of the things that we love to do as sports writers are tell people stories. And that could be a story of their journey in their sport, you know, football or something else. But it also can be a story of, you know, struggles in life and going through adversity and joy and everything on the spectrum there. So DJ, you explained a little bit about it in your column, but tell us a little more background of how the Torres coaches story came together and what impact that had on you kind of as a writer and storyteller. And then Chad, I'll get you in a minute.
Well, it was kind of an idea that I'd already had. It's, you know, Hispanic Heritage Month. My family's from Mexico. It's, you know, something that kind of meant a lot to me. I wanted to do something to commemorate it. I couldn't get the Dave Aranda interview, obviously, because he's a real, like, first of all, he just doesn't like talking about himself. And second of all, it's just pretty tough to get interviews with, you know, the football team at Baylor, unless it's like preset ahead of time. Yeah, but like you had mentioned that, you know, Coach Torres being from El Paso, there are not a lot of Hispanic high school football coaches. And in Central Texas, we've got, you know, 2 like head coaches, basically.
Right.
You know, Ricky Torres, Ruben Torres. You thought they were brothers.
I did. That was a mistake on my part.
Yeah. Which, you know, until I texted both of them. We're in a little group chat. I was like, I'd really like to write this story. I think it's really cool. Y'all are, you know, brothers in coaching. And, you know, maybe we can talk about the Hispanic background. Immediately, I remember it was, I think it was Ricky. He's like, it's a really good idea, but we're not brothers.
When you texted me that, I was like, you're kidding. I mean, I swear I thought Ruben told me that they were brothers, but what do I know? I heard that from somewhere. I'm blaming someone.
Yeah. I think it's because Ricky was on Ruben's staff at Marlin last year. And
I did know that Ruben has 2 brothers who are head football coaches. Correct?
Yeah. So like when we did the interview and he told me, you know, like what, you know, my brothers are coaches. They were actually coaches before Ruben got into coaching because he was working more of a government job. And then when he was done with that, he was like, you know, I didn't really know what to do. got into coaching, and it's gone really well for him so far. But yeah, it was kind of a contrast of like when I talked to Ricky, we definitely talk more about the heritage side of things, and like he's got the job that he has and he's gone where he has because part of the heritage that you work hard and you keep going, because you don't have that many other options really. And it really related to that in a lot of ways. And with Coach Ruben at Marlin, it was very more football heavy, talking about, how he got into football, his whole family's into football. He comes from a military background. And I found it interesting that even though he's from El Paso, which is like right across border from Mexico, but like I mentioned, he's from a military background. So he had a bit more of a diverse setting growing up, as opposed to just being in a place where it was all Hispanic people. And, and for Ricky, like he's, I think maybe 2 or 3 generations removed from his family in Mexico. So he's a Texas kid, and in Texas football,
played for Johnny Tusa at Mexico High, and I loved the old school like big shoulder pads picture of him. That was great stuff. Yeah, and it's just I'm first generation. Like my family is from Mexico. I was born in the States, but I started pre-K in Mexico, and then we came to Texas, and been here. My parents have been here for over 2 decades now. So it's still that kind of like you relate to even a few generations down, where you don't feel Mexican enough, but you don't feel American enough. And so you're always trying to prove something to somebody. And I felt like I really related that to, like, even now, Ricky Torres told me, like, he tries to stay humble and remember that he's always got to work hard. He doesn't like it when people, like, he doesn't tell people that he's the athletic director at Itasca, as well as the head football coach now. Because, it doesn't feel natural of like, okay, yeah, like I'm here when I used to be here. Because you're always working towards something more, and you're always trying to prove yourself. And so that's kind of why this meant a lot to me, writing this story.
Yeah. Let's be honest. Sorry. Being the athletic director of the Itasca Wampus Cats could really go to somebody's head.
Yeah. Hey, man. It's a start.
Just really served, it really just served to remind me of like the position I'm in. Like, I'm a first generation Mexican American sports writer covering high school football in Texas. And there's not a lot of people that can say that.
No.
So it's tough. It's challenging. I'm not going to lie to you and say that I took this job because I absolutely love football. I'm wearing a soccer jersey, for God's sake. And I took this job because you offered me Baylor baseball. So.
I did. I know. I'm not stupid.
Yeah, but it's still, I think that covering high school football is something that every sports writer should do, because it definitely will give you an experience that you can't compare to anything else. So, yeah.
Well put. Well, well done on the story and honestly on the explanation of it, both in your column and just now. Chad, to kind of turn the question a little bit around to you, what is just maybe one of your favorite stories that you've written, either for the Trib, for your book, for some other publication?
Yeah, I mean, you would ask me this question when I don't have my Republic of Football poster behind me like I normally do. I guess that's my fault, though. So like the Republic of Football, I got to tell 42 different stories from different towns and sort of their moment of glory from that town. And I don't know if there's one that, like, when people hear me talk about the book that I always talk about that I fall back on, but At the risk of doing that, I'll just go ahead and say probably my favorite story from the book was that of Hayden Fry, who grew up in Odessa, playing for the Odessa Broncos. Most people that know about Hayden Fry know about Hayden Fry at Iowa, or maybe Hayden Fry at SMU, who signed Jerry Levias as the first Black player in the Southwest Conference. But back in the 1940s, Hayden Fry was a high school senior, and they got really far in the playoffs and then lost, at some states late in the playoffs. And then the next spring rolls around, and Hayden Fry realized there's a loophole in the UIL rule book that if you haven't turned 18 on September 1st, that you're eligible to play high school football. So Hayden goes and checks the birthdays of like 10 of his senior teammates. And it turns out none of them will be 18 by September 1st. Or no, 19, if you haven't turned 19 on September 1st, right? So none of them are going to be 19 by September 1st. So they all just agree to flunk senior English that spring, right?
Wow.
And they come back the following fall and, having all these guys, all these seniors back, plus everybody they already had, they go and win the state championship,
Yeah.
And that's Hayden Fry being, an innovator and a genius, even when he's a senior in high school. Now, some people might say, well, that's a little tricky. I don't want to use any word any more derogatory than tricky when talking about the great Hayden Fry, but it was a little tricky, right?
Mm-hmm. Sneaky.
So, yeah, I really enjoyed. I got to interview Hayden Fry over the phone. I was going to go interview him at his home in Mesquite, Utah, I believe.
Okay.
Just right close to Las Vegas, though. And I got the feeling like a little bit sick right before I went to go interview him. And of course, he was like 88, 90 years old or something like that when I was going to go talk to him. And the last thing I'm going to do is go be the guy that gets Hayden Fry sick and, whatever. So, but he was fantastic, even on the telephone, and gracious, and just such probably the biggest thrill I've had, even in writing that book, was getting to talk to him and learn that story and write that story for Republic of Football.
Yeah. Well done. Well done. I was going to see if your book was within reach here in my.
Do I have it in my car?
No,
I don't.
Here. Oh, I do have this one within reach. It's a different
Texas Sports.
This is a different book by Chad. So we'll do a little plug, a little commercial there for you. I was a little concerned that you guys were going to turn the question around on me and say what was my favorite story.
Well, I thought you were just going to do that anyway, though.
Well, I know. But so as we were starting the podcast, I was like, oh crap, I got to think about this. And while we were sitting here talking, I did think of at least one that Chad will probably remember this. I can't remember if this was between your stints with the Trib, but Rosebeck had a kid named William Barton. They called him Boo Barton. And this is early 2000s. And he ended up against Lorena having a really, really bad injury and losing his leg, and got amputated. And this was, I would say, a little before the running prosthetics were as common as they are now. I mean, I think they were still sort of like coming through with those. But anyway, he of course, he inspired the GOAT team. I mean, they were trying to win games for Boo and stuff. And he ended up getting one of those running prosthetics and competing in track the next spring. All that to say, I know David Campbell wrote a lot of stories. David G. Campbell wrote a lot of stories about Boo Barton when he was working for us. But a couple summers ago, we did some Where Are They Now stories in the summer. And I went out and talked to Boo Barton, and he's still in Groesbeck. He works. I want to say he worked for the have to go back and look that up, but maybe the fire department or the police department. And has had a great life. He has a family and children, and doing great. And I think he was just kind of honored to be remembered, that his story still resonates with people, and he was happy to share it. And to me, those are the kind of fun stories that we get to tell. They don't always have to be a big name like Hayden Fry. They could be a name like, Boo Barton and Ricky Torres and, these guys. But great stuff.
Well, and it's usually the non X's and O's, non-super football related stuff that you end up remembering, right?
Yeah. Now I will say, one week this was a lot of fun. As you said that, this came to mind.
Mm-hmm.
I remember doing a feature back, DJ, when I was in kind of your position. I was like, this game, there was like an 80-yard touchdown. This other game, there was like a 75-yard touchdown. This other game, there was like a 90-yard touchdown. I'm going to call all these coaches and ask them, what was the play name? What was the play? And why did it work? And let me tell you, these coaches were friggin' in hog heaven, because you talk about dorking out, Oh, can I really break down the X's and O's for you? Sure, I'll be happy to do that. And
the anatomy of a big play.
I honestly never had a better interview with Mark Bell than for that story, the former China Spring coach, because he was just like dorking out, talking about, and we got the block on the edge and yada yada yada, and it was a fun story to do, just to kind of break down why each of those plays worked.
Why don't we do that once a season? When we should do that all the time.
Yeah, there you go. There's another story idea there for you, DJ. So before we go, I want to circle back to our picks for a second. This is not to gloat, because even though I do have a lead, you guys have been chipping away at it lately. But so each week we pick all the games in the area, the three of us, and there's always some where one of us was the only person to pick that particular team to win. And I have decided to call these the coconut picks, because you're dangling out there on a limb. How about that? Isn't that just perfectly cheesy? That, as Jason Orts would say, that's a cherry bomb. At any rate, because I was curious, I wanted to see how we've done in these coconut picks. I wasn't completely sure, but I am leading, which kind of goes with the fact that I'm leading the picks. You would think I'd be leading this 21-13 in those kind of games, but I have also missed my last 4, and I'm 1-10 in my last 11. So I haven't been lighting it up lately. Chad, you are 8-9 in such games. You don't have a ton of those kind of picks. And DJ is 13-33. She likes to throw some darts. So my question is this: what is your strategy when you're picking these games? And does it ever worry you when you see one of the other two of us go the other direction? DJ, I'm gonna start with you.
I don't really care about these picks, to be honest.
At least you're honest.
I usually, a lot of the time, I just pick the opposite of what y'all are picking, just to say I picked the opposite of what y'all are picking. Sometimes it's a gut thing. It's just like, okay, like this team might do, other times I'm just doing it to be nice, because I know they're not going to win, but at least I'll be like,
I wrote a column this week about, hey, when we pick against your team, it's nothing personal. And in the column,
sometimes it is.
Well, okay. maybe you're right. But in the column, I said that personally, I don't throw local teams a bone, but it does sound like DJ will throw a bone to you. So
yeah, DJ is the
for this season. for this season. I'm not gonna say that next year I'll be doing the same thing.
Okay,
but
there you go. I like it. Switching it up. Chad, what do you say?
When I usually, if I'm picking and both of y'all have already picked, which doesn't happen very often, I feel like even like last year on staff, I would be one of the first ones to pick, just because like usually my workflow is such that I'm like, let me get these picks done like tonight while I'm watching TV, and then I just want the last thing I have to do tomorrow, you know. But if I do see one, like especially like where maybe one of y'all is picked, and I'm like, oh, I got him there. You know, I really like those. I don't really make many of those picks where I'm like, I'm going to go the opposite of them. It's more like, they both pick such and such, and I think they're both wrong. Now, obviously, I'm only 8 out of 17 in that situation, so I'm probably a little too cocky, you know. But then, you know, just from an overall perspective, I mean, I was thinking earlier today about how like artificial intelligence and like data-driven like you know, apps and things that we use like that just aren't very good. I feel like AI and data are kind of dumb in a way, you know. But I do like I'm pretty data heavy when I make these picks, just in terms of looking at schedule results and trying to figure out if, you know, if the teams they've played have been good or if they've been terrible. And because sometimes you're like, oh, okay, Axel versus Kearns. Is Kearns good? Let's see, who has Kearns played? Oh, well, Kearns has played like Bullard. I'm just pulling that out. I don't know if they played Bullard. I'm like, but they beat Bullard bad. But is Bullard any good? Because there's like 3 like B schools out there in like Texas football land, like Bartlett and Bullard and Baird and all, like things like that. You know, you can't ever remember if they're like the one that's terrible or not, right?
Yeah.
So then you have to go look and like, oh yeah, that is that B school that's just not any good at all. So that win doesn't really count for anything. So like I fly through like all these data points within about 2.5 minutes, right, to make each pick, and that's how I usually arrive at my pick. Now, the other thing is like data wise and like statistics wise, usually by the end of the year I level out at like 78%, right? Which you do too, because we're usually pretty close, right? So you got a 12-game lead on me, I think, at this point. But I think if I keep getting a game or two a week, we'll go into the playoffs almost dead even. Yeah,
it's certainly a possibility. I'll say this: I was absolutely killing it in these coconut picks. I was 20-3 at one point. Now I'm 21-12. So
you know what I call that?
It's the law of averages.
I call it lucky.
there is some luck involved, certainly. You would think as you get to know the teams better, your picks would even get better, but
that's why it makes it even look more like it's just dumb luck.
I obviously I did get some that were dumb luck, but there were certain ones that I have a feeling about. I would say my general rule, this is a good rule, I'm going to give y'all this as a pro tip: don't pick bad teams. Don't pick bad teams to win. Okay. And if I have to tell you who those are, it probably is going to hurt some people's feelings. But
well, I know like early in the year there were 2 teams in our area that had not won very many games in the last 5 years or more. Right. And they were playing each other, and I went with one of them, and you're like, how in the world did you go with, you know, Frankenstein? And I was like,
I'm going to call him out. I'm going to say, look, if you're picking Meridian and you're picking Bishop Riker this year, because Riker is not good this year. I'm sorry.
Right.
They have a numbers issue. If you're picking those 2 teams, you're going to take a loss. I mean, I'm just saying.
Gosh, this might be our best podcast ever.
All right. So make your picks. What are you doing now, Chad? You're showing us
Billy Bobs.
You're showing us Billy Bobs? Okay. You enjoy that mechanical bull. We're going to add that video to this podcast.
Sounds good.
All right. See y'all.
I do say,
yes,
before we leave, I'm a lot more confident in my college football picks, and I think I've beat y'all for a couple weeks.
Yeah, so Chad's not making those, but yes, DJ has done well. I'm third out of John and DJ in the college picks, and it's partially because I will take a few more chances, and sometimes they're dumb chances. But yes, John is leading those, by the way.
Yeah.
But DJ, you have had some good weeks there, so. All right, good stuff. So Chad will be at Chilton-Bremond. DJ will be at Crawford and Marlin. And we didn't talk about this game, and it's fine. But I'll be at Midway Temple. Intriguing game, but I think Midway is going to still have an uphill climb because of a very key injury. So anyway,
tune in next time to find out how that went.
We'll see how that goes. See y'all.